Right now we're on State Road 70 and Terra Boulevard, where there's been a fatal crash. There's been several vehicles involved with several patients. Unfortunately, one of them didn't survive.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome, and thank you, everybody, for coming here tonight. I'm grateful that everybody's here, surrounded by so many incredible law enforcement. Thank you for coming out tonight. It is such an incredible pleasure to be standing here. Not really the corner I want to be standing at, but I'm doing it here with you all, so I thank you, and do not take any of you for granted for being out here tonight on a Friday night. And I'm also grateful to God to be here and to be able to utilize my voice tonight. I'm Melissa Wandel. I'm president of the National Coalition for Safer Roads and ambassador for Target Zero Florida. We are gathered here tonight to acknowledge and support World Day of Remembrance. World Day of Remembrance for Road Traffic Victims is a global event established to honor the millions who have died or been seriously injured on Florida roadways. Every year, the third Sunday in November, we collectively acknowledge the suffering of all affected victims, families, and communities. This year, on November 19th, the Florida Department of Transportation will light up the Skyway Bridge in honor of all those died on Florida roadways. So thank you for Florida Department of Transportation. And if anybody can go out there Sunday night, get pictures. It's beautiful. It's going to be lit up in Target Zero Florida colors. And just remember, it illuminates the way for us to honor all roadway victims in the state of Florida and around the country. Worldwide, traffic crashes are a major cause of death among all age groups, the leading cause of death for children and young adults ages 5 to 29. In the United States in 2022, according to NHTSA, almost 43,000 people died in roadway crashes. And here in Florida, in this 12-county district, in the last 10 years, we have lost 5,000 fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, husbands, and wives. They've died on roadway crashes in the past 10 years. But let's think about that for a minute, because I always think about, okay, we have 5,000 people that died. You times that by 7 people that knew those 5,000 people, and now you have 35,000 people walking around in grief. You have kids that nothing tastes the same any longer. You've got parents, you've got spouses, you have grieving people walking around all over this country just because somebody decided not to obey a traffic law. This evening, I'm joined by Sheriff Wells, Corporal Bruner, Keith Robbins, and District 1 representatives, along with all law enforcement and you. Thank you, everyone, for being here and for helping to put this event together and to make it a success. We are gathered here to show our support for everyone who is impacted, suffering, or grieving. We are advocating for implementing personal choices on Florida roadways so users can embrace and get to zero fatalities and serious injuries on our roadways in support of Florida Department of Transportation's Target Zero initiative. This collage right here, make sure everybody gets the chance to take a look at it. It was created to memorialize loved ones who have died and to honor those who've been seriously injured on our roadways. My husband and my brother are among the faces on this board. Tonight, I stand at the same sacred corner where my husband was killed 20 years ago on October 24th by a red light runner. 1 year prior to that red light runner causing that crash that night, they took a ticket. This time, they not only took a ticket, but they took a life. My brother was seriously injured that same evening and remains emotionally and physically debilitated today. This crash happened in the blink of an eye. 3 cars, 9 people involved. 7 ended up being physically okay, not so much emotionally, but physically. 1, my brother, was critically injured, went to the ER, and Mark, at only 30 years old, my husband, went to the morgue. We lost both my brother and my husband that night, one physically and one emotionally, all because of one decision not to obey a safety law. That one decision not to obey a safety law drastically changed the course of our lives that night. At this intersection 20 years ago, I am 9 months pregnant, surrounded by lights and sirens as law enforcement surround my brother's vehicle. The compassion, the kindness, the courtesy by law enforcement will never be forgotten. Thank you so much, law enforcement. You really matter. 20 years ago, I hear my brother screaming, and I am pleading with EMS to take me to my husband. Somehow, I am calm, but I plead with God, please God, not now, don't take him now. I see my mother-in-law fall to her knees in the road, crying and screaming, no, no, not my son. I call my dad in New York, and he excitedly interrupts me and said, oh, the baby's arrived, she's on her way. And I reply, nope, there's been a horrible crash, Mark died, and Phil is critically injured. My parents drive 24 hours to get here. They tell me they cried all the way here. I still flinch today when I hear sirens, I see lights. When I come up on a crash scene, I'm instantly 9 months pregnant, standing in this corner just 20 years ago. The depth of grief caused by roadway tragedy is life-altering. The person you were, you no longer are. The people that surround you in your happiness are somehow rapidly gone in your grief. In an instant, your family is fragmented and devastated. Many survivors, like my brother, they never recover. His life continues to be tormented by this crash today. He is 50, he's debilitated, he walks with a cane, and he's emotionally absent. Carl Sandburg said, a baby is God's way of saying the world must go on. Truer words could never be spoken. 19 days after Mark's death, our daughter Madison was born. The day of her birth, my heart grieved heavily for them both. They deserve to know one another. As I looked into her eyes, I made her the same promise I made to my husband at the crash scene, that I would not be a broken mommy, and that I would serve her well, and that she would know who her father was in this life. I told her that my husband loved her, he cherished her before she was born. Mark wanted to be a dad even more than I wanted to be a mom, and that's saying a lot. He was so eager, and he was so excited for our baby to arrive. I can see him in her eyes today. Unfortunately, Madison sees no memories of Mark or the 3 of us as a family, and this has shaped her life in ways that I could never have envisioned that tragic evening. Kids need their dads. I never took life for granted, but I never thought that my child would grow up without her father. I've worked relentlessly to create change due to my husband's death and my brother's inability to emotionally move forward. One milestone is passing the Mark Wandel Traffic Safety Act, which is the red light safety cameras, alongside Ron Reagan. An act that has prevented crashes, an act that has saved lives. Thank you. Thank you. My path has been rewarding, but it's also been difficult, it's been lonely, and it's been emotional. The one I needed the most to share the highs and lows of this advocacy, this life, I terribly miss. My daughter's milestones, her highs, her lows, in life, beside the exception of me, she is carried alone, and nothing could make my heart break more. I am, however, committed to achieving 0 serious injuries and 0 deaths on our roadways, and you can be too. We can all be a part of the solution. We can and we must drive down insatiable heartache on our roadways, and we can do hard things. I want to thank you, law enforcement. My admiration for you is constant. We can all honor law enforcement by obeying safety laws and by pledging to drive safely. Florida's Target Zero initiative aims to create positive change in driver behaviors. All drivers can save lives by slowing down, by reducing distractions, and by being courteous on our roadways. When you do this, you not only save family members from unnecessary heartache, but law enforcement as well. That's right. Law enforcement, they grieve as well. Every single time they have to go to a crash and come up to somebody like me and tell them that they're living the worst day of their life. If we were not loved in this life, we would not grieve. In less than a second, our lives can change, but the love we embrace remains constant. I hope people will remember me and my legacy as being fueled by the love I was gifted. It is this fuel that continues to light my path and maintain my advocacy efforts for a better day on our roadway, today and for many years to come. When you process your hardest moments and pour your passion into others, you'd be amazed at the healing that can take place in your own life. When we lose people we love, we keep pieces of them that will sustain us. It isn't magic, but it's there. But you must be willing to find those pieces of love you tucked away, because when you do, the miles of beautiful moments you recall will not only sustain you, but also propel you forward to aid those that are still searching. That's when life happens, and that's the beauty of being loved. Our family story, it ended tragically, but somebody else's won't due to our combined work. We can keep our families secure and left unaffected if we remain diligently committed to 0 fatalities and serious injuries on our roadways. Together, we can achieve 0 if we remember to support and act to create positive change. Charles Stanley said, "What we learn in the darkness, we must share in the light." These past 20 years, I hope to God that I have shared my personal story, my life, in an effective and impactful way, so that some other little girl doesn't have to grow up without the one we both needed the most. The focus was never telling my sad story, but to showcase how one decision can alter a lifetime when you disobey a traffic law. That one decision on October 24th, 2003, had a devastating domino effect on some members of my family and community, and unfortunately, they will never recover. I must thank Charles Clapsaddle, Sheriff Wells, and Corporal Bruner. From the deepest part of my soul, you see, they stood here with me 20 years ago at that crash scene and remained steadfast and true in their work today. Lives have been left unaffected, and the heartbeat of several families continue due to your diligence to impact lives in the most exceptional way. I have carried you all in my heart. Your compassion, your gentleness, and understanding that evening created a calmness in me that I will never be able to explain. Alls I know that God knew who to call and who to surround me with. You helped to carry me then, and you still, 20 years later, support me today. I see you. You are profoundly appreciated, and I am deeply grateful. Now, I have the honor of introducing Corporal Bruner, a kind and gentle soul who approached me as an FHP crash investigator and who today I call friend.
Good evening. I'm Corporal Bruner with the Florida Highway Patrol. I've been a state trooper for over 29 years now, with the majority of my career right here in Manatee County. Of those 29 years, I've been a homicide investigator for over 25 years. I've been the lead investigator for over 400 fatals just myself, and been on the scene of approximately 2,000 fatal crashes. And just to think, I am only one of 200 homicide investigators with the Highway Patrol. Over the course of my career, I've seen and investigated the carnage of death and destruction inflicted upon the roadways in the state of Florida from dangerous drivers. 20 years ago, at this very intersection, I was the on-call homicide investigator who was called to the fatal crash scene to investigate a 3-vehicle crash. I responded to this intersection and began to investigate the crash. And while I investigated the crash, Miss Wandel was standing on the corner in disbelief for what had just happened. I had no answers for the questions that she had. I had not yet been able to tell her anything since the crash was still under investigation. And to think of that for a moment, you have so many questions from the most traumatic event that you're going through at that moment, and you can't get answers. So at the end of my investigation, I had to go tell Miss Wandel that her husband was killed by a distracted driver who had taken their eyes off the road just for a moment while they were trying to retrieve a sippy cup that had fallen on the floorboard. So in 1/10 of a second, this distracted driver had taken a husband, a soon-to-be father from the family who loved him, and Miss Wandel's life and the life of their unborn child would be permanently altered. I can tell you thousands of stories of these crashes and the impacts of the drivers, their passengers, and their loved ones, but that does not even begin to touch the real impact, the devastation of those who have felt a loss of left behind. So every fatal crash has been one common factor in causation. That's the human element. Aggressive drivers, distracted drivers, drunk drivers, the list can go on. The technology inside our vehicles over the 20 years has changed, but the human element has not. While car technologies protect the drivers, those distractions, advances to protect the driver, have also increased. From cell phones, infotainment centers, and automated vehicles, there is still someone in charge of a 4,000-pound weapon that's about to kill and destroy anything it touches. So how can we stop this destruction to get to 0 deaths? I think there's 3 ways we can save lives. First of all, state laws. The current state laws are weak in reference to cell phone operation and distracted drivers. We need the legislative body of Florida to write and pass sensible laws, enforceable laws to stop to distracted drivers. Second, enforcement. The roadways today are becoming more and more like a war zone. Everyone has seen that reckless driver darting in and out of traffic with their cell phone in their hand, and with law enforcement officers to be proactive, not reactive. So working at crash scenes, we need to find ways to stop these dangerous drivers before they kill themselves or someone else. Third is education. We educate the drivers who are about to step behind the wheel, remind them it only takes a fraction of a second to destroy someone's family. And is your phone, your frustration, or your habits worth it? Remember, there's no rewind, no do-overs, and you cannot take it back. You put the phone down and operate that weapon sensibly. In conclusion, I ask everyone taking driving seriously, if you're in charge of a powerful transportation weapon, therefore treat it as such. I ask our representatives to protect our citizens upon the roadway with sensible and tougher traffic laws that our law enforcement can actually enforce. And lastly, I stand here today to ask my brothers and sisters in blue, green, and tan to find and stop just one more car during their shift and use that traffic stop to either educate, cite, or arrest the distracted, careless, reckless, or impaired driver. Remember, we do not want that dangerous driver to meet our family or another family at that next intersection. Now, I'll turn the microphone over to someone I know very well. He was my field training officer when I was a rookie, and later he was my supervisor as a traffic homicide investigator with the patrol, and now is the sheriff of Manatee County, Sheriff Wells.
Thank you so much, David. And before I say anything, Melissa, I want to personally thank you for inspiring all of us to do more, to absolutely, we have to do more, and we see you, and you help us do just that. So thank you very much. We appreciate you. So early on in my career, I had the honor and the privilege of being a state trooper with the Florida Highway Patrol and a traffic homicide investigator. And when I drive around Manatee County today, I often remember the haunting memories of having to respond to the house of a family member to deliver that message that their loved one had just died because of the carelessness of another driver. And when I stand here today and I look at this intersection, we all have a lot of memories that we wish we could forget. But when I look out here, I become angry, to be quite honest with you. I become angry because what happened here 20 years ago was avoidable. What happened here 20 years ago did not have to happen. One careless driver that did not care about the others around them has devastated a family, and quite frankly, several of us that know Melissa and know what she's gone through. If I have one message here tonight, is ladies and gentlemen, we have to do better. We can talk about the laws which do need to be increased. We need to talk about that with our legislators, but as people that live in this community, we have to do better. I've been here a long time, and we know that the population is growing, and each and every one of us here tonight can tell a story about what they have seen each and every day they drive throughout this community. We're seeing an increase in distracting drivers. We're seeing an increase in careless drivers, an increase in red light runners, and an increase in those that are unlawfully speeding. So we have to make sure that we get that message out to our children, to our families, to our neighbors, that those decisions will impact people for an entire lifetime. And once again, that's something that we can control together. I wish that we could go out here each and every day as law enforcement and ensure that we were going to stop every driver that was distracted or that was speeding or running red lights, but we all know that's not going to happen. It's going to take the entire community understanding that lives are changed in one split second. And if we're going to truly honor the memory of those that have been killed on Florida roadways, then we have to get serious about the way that we send that message. So God bless each and every one of you. Thank you for being here. And Melissa, thank you.
Good evening. I'm Keith Robbins. I'm the District Safety Administrator for Florida Department of Transportation District 1. We cover the 12 counties of Southwest Florida. First of all, I want to thank Melissa and all those who worked to put this event together and being invited to participate. I appreciate the efforts by all of our law enforcement partners and Melissa and other advocacy groups that seek to improve highway safety on our roadways. What we're talking about is a work of partnerships and relationships that will keep this message going. You've heard statistics about how many people were killed over the last 10 years just in the 12 counties of Southwest Florida. The lights over there that are spelling out 0, each one of those lights represents more than 100 people over the last 10 years who have died on Florida roadways. Just this year alone, there's been more than 350 people killed on Florida roadways in District 1, and more than 10 just in this month. What can we do about it? There's only so much that engineering can do to fix a road or make a road safer, but we are working towards that. A lot of our projects are making intersections safer. They're making stretches of roadway safer for pedestrians and bicyclists. They're making roadways safer to slow down drivers. We're doing that, but there's only so much that engineering can do. Law enforcement can do things, but there's only so much, as you heard the sheriff, there's only so much that they can do. Ultimately, it comes down to the driver behind the wheel. Human behavior is the #1 cause for crashes on roadways. When you talk about speeding or distracted driving or aggressive driving, all of those start with a human decision. And it may not be an intentional decision that somebody's trying to race. It may be something unintentional, like the act that killed Melissa's husband that night 20 years ago. It could be something as simple as you're not even thinking about what you're doing and you're just kind of zoning out and you miss seeing that stop sign or that red light and you hit the pedestrian that's in the crosswalk. Or you're not looking in the right direction and you turn right and you hit a bicyclist or a pedestrian who's trying to cross the road. All of these things are human behaviors. Education will help that, but practice will help it more. And education does not rest with only young or new drivers. It needs to be continuous education with adult drivers. Traffic laws are changing. Roadways are changing. So adults need to educate themselves or seek out the opportunities to learn about traffic and roadway safety. People talk about our objective of Target Zero as being unrealistic. It's something that we can't do. It's not practical. Well, I disagree. People long ago used to think that the world was flat, that there was nothing beyond the ocean until the explorers ventured over the seas and found the New World. People used to think that there's no way that man can fly like a bird until Charles Lindbergh proved that we can not only do that, but fly solo across the Atlantic. And even after that, people thought that men will never fly beyond Earth's atmosphere, and we've been to the moon and back. So I don't believe that Target Zero is something that's unrealistic. It only takes the will and the determination and the decision to do it. So that's what we need people to do. We ask you to work with us. This is a collaborative effort. It takes all hands working together to make this happen, but we can make it happen. We just have to decide to do it. So thank you.
So thank you, everybody. That concludes this tonight. Again, I want to thank Sheriff Wells, Corporal Bruner, Keith. Thank you to everybody that came out tonight. And I would be so remiss if I didn't thank the media. You all have worked hard to be here. Thank you, Charles, for setting everything up tonight. And thank you, media, for sharing, because we could try to, be up here talking, but without you sharing our messaging, we can't always get to those humans that we need to get to. So if every single person here today, we're all always in a hurry, but we all, like the sheriff said, we all have to do our part. We all have to pay attention. We have to bring traffic safety back to the dinner table as well, back to the conference room and back to our parties that we're hanging out with our friends. It shouldn't be joked. I hear about people joking, thinking it's funny when people are doing things out on our roadways, and it's not funny. We need to take the opportunity to educate people because at the end of the day, I do this because I do not want somebody else standing in my shoes. Or my daughters, or where my brother or my husband is, or our family and friends. So thank you all so much for taking the time on a Friday night to come out here. And just God bless each and every one of you. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you.
This is very important for me for several reasons, but I was the sergeant over the traffic homicide unit the night that Mark Wandell tragically died, and the homicide investigator who worked that crash is also here tonight. And really, when I stand here, and I'll talk about this later, when I stand here and I look at this intersection, I frankly become angry because that crash was avoidable. It didn't have to happen. And because of the carelessness of one driver, a life was taken from us, and another one is still trying to recover from the injuries that he sustained there. So, my message tonight is that we have to do better. We have to do better. Is it worth killing someone over? We have to do better. We have to make sure that we obey the traffic laws. It's really that simple. Is one text that you have to read as you're driving down the highway that important that you would risk hurting or killing someone else? I say no. I say we just get back to the basics, right? Because all of us see it. All of us see out here each and every day people that are speeding, people that are still texting and driving, people that are running red lights, and there's no reason for it. So the message has to continue to get out there, especially to the younger generation. We can't continue to go on this way. We have to drive and be sensible about the way that we approach driving. That's a 4,000-pound weapon. Well, it's important because I have seen the destruction that a careless driver can cause to a family. And I think that, prevention is very important. If we can be proactive, if we can get the attention of these careless drivers and maybe prevent something from occurring that's tragic later on, then we've done our job. But we have to bring attention to this, and sometimes that means you're going to get a ticket. Well, I think, we all play a very important role in the driver safety. We all have our own unique talents, and I think it's important that we continue to look at the way that we design intersections, the way that the light cycles go through that intersection. What can we do as government entities to help those that can't learn it on their own? One careless act affects an entire family. I mean, Melissa has gone her entire adult life, 20 years, trying to spread that message of how it affected her and her daughter. And it's very important that we think about the others around us. It's not just about me and it's not just about you. Can we save a life? And we can. These are avoidable.
We have to slow down. We have to not be so aggressive in our driving. We have to stop at red lights. We have to stop at stop signs. We have to use our blinkers. We have to drive more intelligent so that we don't have the victims that we have here. We also need to improve our roads, and we need to improve our sidewalks. We at the City of Holmes Beach are working on multimodal traffic paths, and we've gone to the county to see about getting some money from the TDC so that we can use that money to assist our tourists and our visitors that come to the island, because we have had a couple traffic homicides in the past year. That they're going to be held accountable. That's what they have to realize, that the split-second decision that they make to run a red light, if they take a life, they're going to prison. You see it all the time. I even talk to my officers and I tell them to not, when they go into a pursuit, to be careful that they don't drive fast enough to get them a manslaughter charge. It's very important. It's law enforcement, it's everybody, has to be careful. While we're going to a hot call, My guys know that there's rules. They have to stop at the red lights, even though they have lights and siren going. You know, people that are running the red lights, they're taking their entire life in their own hands, not just the life of other people, but their entire life, because look at what this does to their families as well when they have to go to prison and they lose their livelihood. And that's what they need to do. They need to open their eyes. They need to remember that even though they're on vacation, they can't be in vacation mode while driving. They have to pay attention to the signs, pay attention to the stoplights, and pay attention to the people in the crosswalks. They need to make sure they're not driving in the bike lanes. They can't pass in a bike lane. There's a lot of things that's going on that they shouldn't be doing, that if they paid attention, our entire community would be a lot safer. And that could trickle down to the state, and then it trickles down to the nation. We want them to remember the victims. And these are the people that have been hurt, and the victims' families, because they've been devastated by the acts of stupidity of others, that it just was unnecessary. You know, 10 seconds of paying attention would have made a world of difference, and all these people on the sign would still be alive today.
Well, basically, any crash, there's carnage everywhere. Where there's 3 vehicles, the whole scene has been shut down. There's glass and vehicle parts strewn throughout the intersection. That's correct. It was a later during the investigation, we determined it was a distracted driver. But just take that one moment while you're operating the car to let them know that you're in charge of a 4,000-pound weapon that destroys and kills, and you need to operate that vehicle responsibly and put your phone down. Take a few moments and as you approach those intersections, because you never know what family might be at that next intersection. It could be theirs or someone else's. Well, immediately you can just do the speed limit, and even being more careful, slow 5 miles an hour below the speed limit, because that extra few seconds is the difference between hitting a car at speed or even slowing down. Even if you make a mistake, hitting a car at 20 is very, very low considering hitting them at 40. There's a difference of injuries and death. Could be that 5 miles an hour or a few seconds. Just slow down. Everybody's going to see you at the next red light anyway. Well, the congestion, where then people's their patience will get very thin based upon our traffic, because we've lived here for so long. We've been used to the lower traffic, and with our new residents causing more traffic and less patience, just take the few minutes and get home safely. Get home to your family, hug your dogs, your pets, and just think that you made it safely, because the roadway is like a war zone if you lose your patience. And plus, if you make a mistake while being an aggressive driver, that it could cost you your life too, and also jail time. Just slow down, drive safe, don't drink and drive, wear your seatbelt, and obey all the laws, and be courteous to other drivers.
We're involved because as part of our mission of Target Zero to get to 0 fatalities on our roadways, this is a good way to educate the people and driving public of their responsibility and the price for when people are not responsible drivers. It's really a combination of things, but some of the ones that we see most often are aggressive driving, distracted driving, and speeding. That engineering will not always fix the roadways and make them 100% safe. We can make and are making the roads safer as we work on projects around the state. Law enforcement is out there to try and do their jobs in enforcing driving rules and regulations. But ultimately, the best tool to get safer roadways are for drivers to drive safely. Obey the posted speed limits. Don't drive distracted. Don't drive when you're angry. There are a lot of things that can make things safer out here. This intersection, the signals work. The roadway is good. There are law enforcement here, but none of that matters if somebody willfully ignores it all and blows through the red light. Again, because congestion makes people anxious, it gets them angry. Try and keep your emotions in check. Leave earlier if you need to. Because distracted driving is not just having your hands on a cell phone or trying to change the radio channel. It's also not thinking about what you're doing behind the wheel. If somebody's angry or anxious or worried about something, they may not be thinking about what they're doing, and they may not be speeding, but they may miss the stop sign or the red light and plow into somebody in front of them. Roundabouts are useful in several ways. They are a good traffic control measure for allowing traffic to move more freely and more smoothly through an intersection. But the biggest thing is they are much safer. They go from 64 conflict points in a standard four-way intersection to only 8 in a modern roundabout. And all of the ones in a modern roundabout are glancing blows. There are no right angle or head-on conflict points, which is where you get your more serious injury and fatal injury crashes. They also work to slow people down because you have to go at a slower speed to properly navigate a roundabout. So those are some of the reasons why they're much safer. That every life matters and every life is precious. And when somebody's behind the wheel in their car, they have the ability to take a life or protect a life. And we would prefer people to drive responsibly, drive safely, and protect a life.
It's such an honor to be able to have the National Day of Remembrance here at Mark's Marker, where 20 years ago he was killed by a red light runner. And to be able to honor him and all other people all over this country globally that have died on our roadways. So it's an honor to be able to share. This is the first time I've ever been here at this marker, along with so much law enforcement. Besides that night that he was killed. So it's an honor. I'm grateful to be able to still share, him and his love in this crash in order to educate and advocate for better roadways and educate and advocate people so that we can just simply drive, bike, or walk and share the road. So I'm working with the Florida Department of Transportation, and they have a campaign that's Target Zero Florida, which means that we all want to get to zero injuries and zero fatalities. It doesn't mean that we'll get to zero crashes, but zero injuries and zero fatalities. So if we get to a day where we Target Zero Florida means let's get to people, let's do these campaigns before people run a red light, before they decide to drive distracted, before they use a cell phone, or before they decide to cut somebody off because they're in a hurry. What we want to do is get people to understand that if you're a pedestrian, you walk in the crosswalk. If you are a bicyclist, you are a motorist. So you better make sure that you are stopping at those stop signs and stopping at red lights as well, because you have no armor. So we want to get to the driver. We want the driver to understand that they have to be mindful while they are out on our streets, because at the end of the day, we want to drive down insatiable heartache. I do not want somebody else walking in my shoes. And in these last 20 years, there has been, and there will be more, but we need to curb that. And the more messaging we can give to our pedestrians, our bicyclists, our drivers, to all share the road mindfully, we will get to zero serious injuries and zero crashes. It's gratifying. It's that for 20 years, people have been listening and people have been supporting. I haven't done any of this work on my own. It's been number one because of love is the reason why I'm doing it, and thankful to God that I have a voice and that I could stand on my own 2 feet. And because of my daughter being born just 2 weeks after this crash, she's inspired me every day to be a better person. And so to be able to be here and for law enforcement, for you, Charles, media, for the Florida Department of Transportation, for everybody to come around to say, we're with you, we're walking beside you, and we are going to get people to understand that roadway tragedy is preventable and that we can save lives. It is a song to my heart that'll never stop singing, that they have the ability to save a life. Every day when we get on these roadways, we have the ability to either save somebody's life or end somebody's life. We hold that in our hands every day, and we have the ability to go out there and drive safely so that we can not only protect ourselves and our own families, but the families of other people. We own that. We have the power to do that. And if I stop talking about it, and if I stop not believing in it, then people are going to just keep continuing to go on and do what they're going to do. But we can work together, and we can save lives, and we can drive down insatiable heartaches, and there can be less Mark Wandel stories.